I thought I buried my husband 2 years ago, then I saw his face on a stranger's wedding invitation. I never expected the mail to change my life again. It was a plain Tuesday morning. I had a cup of coffee that was too hot, a plant on the windowsill that needed water, and a stack of envelopes on the kitchen table. My name was on the front of one of them. I opened it with my fingers, careful like I always am with paper that could hide bad news. Inside was a wedding invitation. The paper was thick and the printing was pretty. There was a photo glued to the corner. A man in a suit smiled at the camera like he had practiced for the shot. He looked like someone you would trust. He looked like the kind of man who made people laugh at dinner and fixed things around the house without saying much. I had buried that face. My heart stopped. The coffee burned the roof of my mouth and the cup slipped out of my hands. It hit the tile with a sound I felt in my teeth. The invitation did not fall with the cup. It lay on the table, flat and cruel, and his face looked right at me. His name was on the invitation. It was not the name he used with me, the name that had fit in my mouth like a song. It was a different name, one I had never heard before, but his eyes, his nose, the small scar near his left eyebrow, all of it was the man I buried 2 years ago. I thought I buried my husband 2 years ago, then I saw his face on a stranger's wedding invitation. I could not make the room breathe. The clock on the wall ticked like someone was counting down. I touched the paper with a shaking finger, as if it were fragile glass. The photo clicked under my skin like a stone. For a long minute, I only stared. My mind tried to put the pieces together like a child trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Maybe it was a look-alike. Maybe the photo was of someone who happened to share his face. Maybe my grief had made me see things. Then my hands went cold. A memory slipped into my head, a muddy hillside, a coffin pushed under wet earth, the way his coat had smelled of rain and oil, the way the minister had said, "We will now commend his soul to the earth." My knees remembered the weight of the shovel as if I held it again. The invitation had a date. It was only a few weeks away. It had a place, a church I had never visited. And it had a name for the bride, someone I had never met. The groom's name matched the one on the invitation. Beneath the names, the invitation used words like joy, joined, and together forever. The paper hurt. I wanted to tear it up. I wanted to burn it. I wanted to call the police and make them explain. Instead, I wrapped the invitation in a dish towel and put it in the bottom drawer. I closed the drawer so the paper could not breathe. Then I sat down on the floor and cried like I had not cried in 2 years. The sound came from my chest and shook me like thunder. I cried for the life I had lost, for the quiet mornings we had shared, for the future we had bought with a little money and a lot of promises. I cried for the fact that I had trusted him until the very end. After the tears, my head cleared a little. I had to remember what happened 2 years ago. I had to remember the beginning of the end. His name was Daniel Carter. He liked radio shows and old movies. He kept his socks in a drawer that always smelled faintly of cedar. He could make a mean omelet, and he loved to paint little pictures on napkins. He loved me in a way that made me feel safe. We had married young, at a courthouse with crepe paper and a cake from the grocery store. He kissed me like the world was small and easy. Then something changed. It started like a quiet leak under a sink. A look that lasted too long at a girl on a bus. A phone call he hid. A night he came home smelling like someone else's perfume and told me I was silly for worrying. I listened to friends and I told myself to trust him. I forgave the small things. I did not want to be the person who made late-night scenes. One night he did not come home. I called his phone until my fingers went numb. I drove his usual roads, calling his name at every bar and diner. The police found his car just off a narrow highway outside town. It had been in a crash. The officers said he had been thrown. They said the driver had not survived. When they told me his name, I fell like a tree. His funeral was muddy and full of people who said the right things. I stood by the grave and watched them lower the casket. The ground swallowed it in pieces and someone patted my back as if pats could hold me up. People brought casseroles and flowers. The world said sorry and took his things from the house. I thought the ache would always be there, but I learned to fold it small and hide it under my clothes. 2 years is a long time and also no time at all. I learned to drink coffee without his mug. I learned to sleep without the weight of his arm across my ribs. I learned to laugh with friends who did not know him. I paid the bills and fixed the leaky sink myself. I learned that life keeps moving whether you are ready or not. But that day, with the invitation in my drawer, the past reached through the wood and slapped me awake. I sat at the kitchen table and wrote a note to myself. Don't tell anyone yet. Think. Breathe. Plan. I folded the note into my pocket like armor. The next days were small acts of a frightened detective. I went through photos and found a picture of Daniel by the lake, his hair wild from wind and his smile crooked. He was there, in sunlight, alive. I compared the photograph to the wedding invitation. The scar near his eyebrow was the same. The way his left ear bent a little when he smiled, same. I did what I should not have done. I went to old friends. I called his sister, Lily, who still kept a box of his things. Her voice was thin when she answered. We think of him, she said. We miss him. I told her nothing about the invitation. Instead, I asked about the crash. Didn't they ever find anyone else? Did anyone ever say they saw him after that night? She said no. We both hung up with empty words. I drove past the highway where his car had been found. 2 years before, there had been tire marks in the grass and a police cruiser parked on the shoulder. Now it was just a stretch of road with trees shading the asphalt. I sat in my car and watched the place where dark had touched our lives. I could not see the answers. I started small because big plans scare the heart. I called the funeral home. They were helpful. We handled the service for Mr. Carter, the woman said. She gave me the paperwork. Cremation? Burial? She read from a file and I told her to stop. I told her I already knew. I wanted to know if anything had changed, any returns, any requests. No, she said. All is closed. I began to notice little things I had missed when my mind was still broken. A withdrawal from his account 2 weeks after his funeral. A flight booking to another state he never mentioned. A name on a card, someone he had written to from the hospital. Who had signed the death certificate? I called the county clerk. Forms, stamps, dates that did not always match in my head. The more I dug, the more small edges caught my skin. People told me to let go. Closure, they said, like a bandage could fix a broken bone. I tried to let go 1,000 times. I went to a grief group and sat in a circle of strangers who passed tissues and told stories that sounded like mine. A woman with short hair told me something quiet. You never really know someone, even when you think you do. I thought she meant that with kindness, but it landed like a grain of salt in an open wound. At night, in the dark of my house, I would pick up his jacket from the closet and breathe in the musty scent of him. The jacket smelled of rain and old cigarettes, but mostly it smelled like him. I would tell it small secrets. If you were alive, I would say, I would scream. I would ask. I would make you explain. The jacket held my words like a pillow. Then, maybe a year after the funeral, someone knocked on my door. She was a neighbor, a young woman named Maya, with 2 kids and a baby on her hip. She said her car had broken down outside our neighborhood and her husband had gone to find a tow truck. She smelled like detergent and sun. We sat and drank tea, and she showed me a photo on her phone of a man who looked like Daniel. He was with her husband at a community barbecue. He says he saw this man at the hardware store, she said, but my husband says he might be dreaming. I told Maya it was probably someone else. I wanted to believe that because it was easier. For months I found little hints in places I could not say were real. A credit card charge in a city he had never visited. A voicemail in my mailbox with a voice I could not make out. Once, in a diner, a man at the counter asked me if I liked the painting on the wall, and his face, something about it, felt like Daniel's laugh wrapped around the words. I left without finishing my coffee. I tried to be kind to myself. I volunteered at the library and read to children who loved stories about pirates and dragons. I painted small pictures on napkins like he used to. I learned to smile like someone who was alive even if part of me stayed buried on that muddy hill. I learned to trust again in tiny ways. Still, the invitation sat in the drawer like a sleeping animal. I would open the drawer sometimes and look at it as if it were a map. The more I looked, the more I found wrong things about the way his death had been handled. Names that did not match. A witness statement that had been lost. A photograph on file that was a different angle than the ones I had. By the time a month had passed since the invitation came, I had made a list. I had the wedding date, the place, the groom's name. I Googled the church and found a small parish that posted photos of past weddings. I did not find his face. I found brides in white and chubby ring bearers and confetti, but not him. People had told me to move on. I told myself to move on. Instead, I bought a bus ticket. The train was loud and the tracks sang underfoot. I sat with the folded invitation in my lap like a talisman. I told myself what I had told everyone. Maybe it is a mistake. Maybe it is a look-alike. Maybe grief bends the truth into nasty shapes. But something deeper said, go. When I arrived in the town, the church was small with a steeple like a finger pointing at the sky. The bells smelled of old bronze and rain. Women in dresses walked across the lawn carrying lilies. The town hummed a friendly tune I had not heard in a long time. I stood at a distance and watched people move like puzzle pieces. I watched bridesmaids laugh and old men with cameras take pictures. The groom was not yet outside. The air tasted like sun and thick sugar. I wanted to walk away. My legs wanted to run. My hands folded the invitation until the lines on the paper made a pattern. Then the doors opened. A man came out and the world narrowed like the eye of a needle. He walked with someone beside him, a woman who smiled and touched his arm. He turned slowly and the sun caught his face. The scar near his left eyebrow was there. The small bend in his ear was there. He looked exactly like the man I had buried. My mouth opened and no sound came out. My feet moved without my permission. I could not stop them. People moved around me in slow motion. The groom smiled and laughed like he was about to make a big promise. I wanted to shout. I wanted to grab the invitation and wave it like a flag. I wanted to pull him aside and ask where he had been the night he was supposed to be dead. I wanted to slap him for the years he had stolen from me. Instead, I took one step forward and then another. I was so close now that I could see the tiny lines near his eyes, the way his mouth curved when he thought of something funny. He was real. So real. He turned his head and our eyes met. He stopped smiling in a single breath. Emma, he said. I knew my name on his lips like a foreign song. I had not told him my name in 2 years. I had said it into pillows and into emptiness. He said it like it belonged to him. Everything in me closed and then broke open. Behind him, the bride laughed and set a hand on his shoulder. People clapped for something I could not understand. The photos were ready. The band began to tune their instruments. My legs went weak. My hands felt like they were filled with ice. The invitation, forgotten in my pocket, crumpled into a small ball. I could have walked away. I could have stood in the sun and let them believe what they wanted. I could have let the past remain a grave and the name on the invitation a cruel joke. But the man, my husband, was standing at the foot of someone else's altar. He saw me. He knew me. He spoke my name. The crowd moved like waves, and their voices were foam I couldn't hear. The groom, Daniel, started toward me with small, careful steps. The bride's face shifted into something I could not read. The band played a bright chord. I reached for my phone and it slipped from my hand. It clattered on the stone path and the screen shattered like a mirror. People turned. A little girl pointed. Look, she said. They know each other. Her voice was a bell. The groom stopped only 3 feet away. He did not smile. He looked at me like he had been told a secret he had tried to forget. His eyes were not the warm eyes from our living room. They were cold like a storm warning. Emma, he said again, but this time his voice was not the same. It had an edge I had not heard before. He put a hand on his forehead like he was trying to hold his thoughts in place. People began to murmur. The bride's mother crossed her arms. The priest laughed nervously and then coughed. Someone shouted, "Is everything okay?" I could have run then. I could have screamed. I could have called the police and had him arrested on the spot for lying to everyone. But my mouth would not form the words. My mind was a room full of half-open drawers. He reached into his jacket. My body wanted to throw itself at him, to find proof that my husband had been alive and had lied and had come back to hurt me. Instead, his hand came out not with a gun, not with a confession, but with a folded piece of paper. He held it out like an offering. "What is that?" the bride asked. He looked at the paper and then at me. The paper trembled in his fingers. For a second, I tasted metal in my mouth. The sun was a hard coin on the water. People leaned forward as if the air had become interesting. Then, before I could move, before anyone could breathe in time, he unfolded the paper and said, in a voice that was quiet and heavy, "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Everything stopped. The band froze mid-note. The groom's words rolled into the lawn and settled like a stone. The bride's smile dropped. My hands made a fist. My heart beat like a drum. I felt like someone standing at the edge of a cliff, and the cliff was giving way. Then he looked up at me again, and the world went dark with the kind of shock that lives under your ribs. He said my name one more time, and the paper slipped from his fingers and fluttered to the ground. I heard the paper hit the stone like the sound of a life falling apart. I wanted to pick it up, to read the words that had been folded and kept, to see what secret had been written there. I wanted to know if he was lying, or if he had been lying all along, or if he had been the victim of something so strange that the truth would not fit in a single sentence. People around us began to shout questions. Someone started recording with a phone. The bride stepped back as if she had been struck. Her mother shouted my name. The priest tried to usher us into the church like nothing was wrong. My knees shook. I felt every inch of the 2 years press on me. I felt the grave like a quiet hand on my shoulder telling me to be quiet. Then, in the thick noise, a man in a navy suit pushed through the crowd. He had the kind of face you see on television when lawyers show up. He looked at me with a grim mouth and then at Daniel. He pointed at the fallen paper. "You need to see this," he said. The man from the suit stooped and picked up the paper. He smoothed it slowly as if opening a letter from an old friend. He held it up for everyone to see. On the front of the paper was a name and a photo. The name was Daniel Carter. The photo was of a hospital bed and a date stamp. My throat closed. The same face I had buried stared back from a sheet of paper. The man in the navy suit looked at Daniel and then at me. "This was filed with the state 2 years ago," he said. "It says he was declared dead, but the paperwork is incomplete. There's an active investigation." "Who are you?" Daniel's face folded in on itself like someone who had been pressed too hard. He put a hand in his pocket and then took it out slowly. He met my eyes and said, "I didn't tell them that I was alive because I thought it would be easier if I let them bury me." No one moved. The sun kept making shapes on the lawn. The bride's flowers trembled. I felt like someone had struck me so hard I had become two people, the woman who had a ring missing from her finger and the woman who now stood in front of a man who said he had let the world bury him. I could have shouted. I could have screamed. But instead, I felt something thin and steady grow in my chest. It was not forgiveness. It was not love. It was something like a map being drawn in a blank space, a plan with edges. "Why?" I asked, though I did not know if I wanted to hear the answer. Daniel looked at me with an expression that held 100 stories, and none of them were kind. "I didn't know how to get back," he said. "I thought it was better to let them think I was gone." Behind him, the bride clutched her bouquet like a shield. The crowd pressed closer. My phone's cracked screen reflected a small, broken version of my face. Then, as if a hand moved a curtain, an SUV pulled up at the church driveway. People turned. The driver's door opened and a woman in a suit stepped out. She had a badge on her belt. "Everyone please stay where you are," she said. Her voice was calm and sharp. She walked toward us, her badge catching the sun. The world got louder and then quieter at the same time. I looked at Daniel. I looked at the paper in the man's hand. I looked at the badge glinting like a promise. Somewhere inside me, something that had been sleeping for 2 years woke up. It had teeth. I did not know yet what I would do. I only knew that I could not leave the man who had been buried walking toward a new life without holding him to the truth. The officer's shoes clicked on the stone. The bride's mouth opened, then closed again. The wind moved a stray ribbon. I reached down and picked up the fallen paper. The next thing that happened would change everything. I held the paper and my hands would not stop shaking. The paper was thin and soft from being folded. The photo on it was small, but the face in the photo was the face I knew like the back of my own hand. The date on it showed the day they had said he was dead. The stamp said the hospital had filed it. The navy-suited man, who I now knew was an attorney, kept his voice calm, but his eyes were sharp. The officer with the badge walked slowly toward us. She had a steady voice. "Ma'am, step back," she said to the bride and to the crowd. "Sir, I need you to stay where you are." Daniel looked like he had lost his color. He put his hand into his jacket again, but this time his fingers came out empty. He kept looking at me. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. People around us murmured. Phones pointed like little shiny knives. Someone said, "Is this a joke?" Someone else said, "Is that really him?" The bride clutched the bouquet so tight her knuckles went white. The officer asked my name, and I told her. She asked Daniel his name, and he said it. She asked if anyone had proof that he had been dead. The attorney in the suit held the paper higher. "This was filed 2 years ago with the state," he said. "It shows a death declaration. There is a mark that says incomplete. There is an open line of inquiry. We need to sort this out." The officer nodded like she understood. "Sir, you need to stay with me for a few questions," she said to Daniel. "We will step to the side. Please do not leave." Daniel's eyes moved toward the church doors like a man ready to bolt. He took one small step away from me. The bride's mother looked like she wanted to hit him. The priest's face turned as red as the church carpet. The band stopped playing and someone slowly put their trumpet down. For a moment I wanted to shout, to scream all the years I had been quiet into the air. I wanted to tell everyone how he had come home smelling like perfume, how he had said one thing and done another. I wanted to show the world the hole he left in me. But the officer did not care about my anger. She wanted facts. She walked Daniel away from the crowd and asked him questions quietly. I could hear pieces. "Where were you 2 years ago? Why did you not contact family? Who helped you?" He answered in short sentences. His voice sounded small and unsure. When they finished talking, Daniel was led to the church steps, where a few chairs had been set up for elderly guests. He sat down like a man who had been punched. The bride's smile had become a blank line. Her father spoke quietly into his hand and then stepped forward. "We will postpone the ceremony," he said. "We will talk." The crowd began to thin. People moved in groups and talked fast, as if they could make sense of a broken puzzle by saying words out loud. Someone from the church office called a number on her phone and spoke in quick whispers. The attorney in the navy suit turned and looked at me. His eyes were softer now. He said, "Ma'am, may I speak with you?" He introduced himself as Mr. Hale. He said he worked for a lawyer who had helped with the death filing. He wanted to know how I had come to have the invitation. I told him the truth. It had arrived in my mail, and I had come because the photo looked like Daniel. Mr. Hale nodded and then said something that made my stomach fall into a hole. "There are irregularities," he said. "We believe someone filed false paperwork. There are signatures that do not match. We believe there may have been fraud surrounding the death declaration." Fraud. The word sounded like a cold wind. The officer came back and said there would be an interview. Daniel would be asked to come to the station for more questions. The bride, whose name was Sarah, came to my side with watery eyes. "I am so sorry," she said. "I had no idea." I thought. Her voice broke. I told Sarah I am sorry too. I wanted to say so many mean things to the man who had stood outside her wedding, but my voice was a dull stone. Before the officer and the lawyer left, Mr. Hale placed the paper gently into my hand. "Keep this," he said. "You may be called upon to help." I felt like a character in one of those courtroom movies Daniel liked, except this time the plot had leaked into the daylight and my life was the scene. I left the church with the invitation in my pocket and my head full of questions. People watched me walk away like someone leaving a stage after a bad play. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. The sun was too bright, and the town looked like a postcard that did not match the story inside. I drove home slowly. The radio played a song Daniel had loved, and I changed the station. I needed silence. At home, the house felt too quiet, too much like the first weeks after the funeral when you do not know which cup is yours and which is his. I sat at the kitchen table and put my elbows on the wood. The paper in my pocket felt hot. I called Lily, Daniel's sister. Her voice was small when she answered. "Emma," she said. "What happened?" I told her to come over. I did not tell her everything on the phone. I wanted to show her the paper face to face. When Lily knocked and walked into my living room, She looked at me like someone who had seen a ghost. She hugged me and then sat down. I handed her the paper. Her eyebrows drew together the way they did when she found a stain on a shirt. "What is this?" she whispered. I told her the story. The invitation, the photo, the wedding, the officer, the lawyer. Lily's mouth tightened. "I always thought something was off," she said. After the funeral, there were phone calls to Daniel's bank. Some of the signatures were crooked. I tried to ask, but everyone closed up. We spent that afternoon as detectives. We opened boxes of his things that had been left in his closet. We found old envelopes, a hotel key from a town 2 hours away, a business card for a clinic in another state, and a small notebook with a name that was not his. There were little arrows we had missed before, pointing to other lives he had touched. My heart banged on the insides of my ribs. It felt like a drum someone was beating with bad news. Lily said, "We need to find out who filed that death paper. We need to see everything." I nodded. I wanted answers even if they would hurt like fresh cuts. After Lily left, I sat on the floor and opened the bottom drawer where I had hidden the invitation. The drawer was full of small things, a ticket stub from a movie we had seen on our 3rd anniversary, a spoon with a chip, a dried leaf he had picked up on a walk. I found an envelope with his name in a different handwriting. Inside was a key and a small note that said, "If I ever have to disappear, this is for you. I love you." I read the note 3 times. The paper felt like it had been handled often. My stomach turned. Did he leave it? Had he really planned this? I could not tell. The next week came with small, sharp things. The officer called me for a statement. She asked me to come to the station. Mr. Hale met me there. I sat in a hard chair and told them everything I could remember. I told them about the funeral, the car crash, the tire marks, the last text messages. I told them about the jacket in the closet and the way his coat smelled like rain and oil. They asked nothing about revenge. They asked about facts. They wanted dates and times and the exact words he had used in his last messages. I told them everything I could remember and some things I had never told anyone. When I left the station, a man in a dark jacket handed me a business card. "If you need help," he said. The card said the name of a private investigator, Marcus Reed. He had a small office not far from town. Lily said, "Call him. He's good." I put the card in my pocket like a new kind of armor. The days after that were a slow grind. I visited the funeral home again. I called the county clerk. I watched the mail like a hawk. Each small piece of paper felt like a thread that might lead to a knot. Some of the threads pulled loose. Some stayed tight. Sometimes I wanted to stop. My chest felt raw and tired. One evening, exhausted, I fell asleep on the couch with the TV humming. I woke to the sound of a knock at the door. I looked at the clock. It was late. I wiped my eyes and went to the door. Outside stood Marcus Reed. He had a calm face and tired eyes. He introduced himself and said he had been doing some looking. He told me that the death filing had fingerprints that did not match Daniel's. He told me that someone had used his social security number to file things after the crash. He said there were phone calls made from a payphone 2 towns over the day the paperwork was filed. He said this sounded like a plan. Who would do this? I asked. Marcus shrugged. People who want to hide. People who want to take what another person had. People who are good at pretending. I told Marcus about the invitation. He said that someone might have used Daniel's photo to help conceal their work. Photos are tricky, he said. You can lift a face and put it in a place that does not match. Lily came over that night and we made a plan. We would look for the hospital reports. We would see if there were surveillance cameras near the highway where his car was found. We would check bank records. We would ask questions no one wanted to ask. The plan made my hands steady again. For a moment, I felt like someone who had a map and a torch. The grief did not leave, but it moved to the side like a heavy coat you put on a chair. I could work. We worked for weeks. We called names, read files, visited offices with stiff forms and tired clerks. We found small things, an extra signature at the hospital, a security camera that had been turned away the night of the crash, a voicemail recorded by someone who had said they saw a man on the road 2 nights before the crash. Each fact tasted like a clue. One night, exhausted and feeling a little braver, I unlocked the bottom drawer again. I pulled out the envelope with the key and the note he had left. The key was old and heavy. I tried it in the small locked box on the shelf. The box clicked open. Inside was a passport with a different name on it. The face in the passport photo was his. The name was not Daniel Carter. It was something else. There were stamps from other countries. There was a plane ticket stub to Belize. There was a small photograph of a woman I did not know and a child with Daniel's eyes. My head spun. This was more than hiding. This was a whole other life. Before I could think, there was a loud noise from the street. It sounded like a truck. My heart jumped. I moved toward the window and looked out. A van had stopped in front of my house. Men in dark clothes jumped out. They moved fast and with purpose. Some had masks. Some had vests with letters I could not read in the dim light. My mouth went dry. My phone buzzed on the table, but my hands felt heavy. I wanted to call Lily or Marcus, but my legs felt like they were glued to the floor. A shout came from the front yard. The men were on my porch now. They banged on the door and shouted for me to open. My breath came fast and sharp. I reached for the key in my hand and then for the passport and the photograph. I shoved them into the box and pushed the box back on the shelf. My mind moved like lightning. Who were these men? Were they connected to Daniel? Were they here to take me? To take the papers? The doorknob rattled. Voices outside said, "Open up." Police. Federal. The sound of boots on my front steps was like thunder. I pressed my back against the wall and felt the plaster cool against my spine. My heart thudded so loud I could hear it in my ears. The box on the shelf felt like a nest holding something dangerous. Then the door burst open. A group of men in dark uniforms rushed in. They had badges that flashed in the lamplight. One man pointed at me and shouted, "Hands up! Don't move." They moved like they had practiced this scene 1,000 times. I froze with my hands raised, the key still in my palm. Lily's voice screamed from behind me. She had come in through the kitchen door and stood with her hands up too, her face white as a cloth. One of the men walked toward the shelf where I had put the passport. He reached and pulled the box down. He opened it slowly and peered inside. His eyes widened. "Where is the rest?" he asked. I tried to speak. The words came out thin. "What do you want? Who are you?" The man with the badge looked at me with a face that did not promise anything kind. He said, "We are here for Daniel Carter. We have reason to believe he is part of a larger scheme. You are not under arrest yet, but you are in the middle of an investigation." My head spun. Lily grabbed my hand. Outside, the van's engine idled like a caged animal. The men in masks fanned around the house like a shadow. I did not know how to say the thing that burned in me. I had buried him. I had been at his funeral. I had watched a coffin go under the earth. My knees folded a little. One of the agents picked up the passport. He flipped it open and then looked at the photograph of the child. "Is this his?" he asked. I swallowed. "Yes," I said. "I think so." The man nodded slowly. He looked at me like a person opening a locked door. He said, "We need to ask you more questions. We need to take these documents." Lily leaned toward me and whispered, "Emma, stay calm." Her voice shook. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. I wanted to tear down the walls and find Daniel and make him answer for everything. But in that moment, surrounded by men who moved like machines and glanced at the photograph with hungry eyes, I did not know what would happen next. Then, as if the whole house held its breath, one of the men turned and reached toward the back door. A loud crash sounded at the back fence. A car horn blared. Something slammed into the yard like a heavy hand. Outside, in the dark, someone shouted a single word. "Stop." Everything that had been steady turned jagged. The men in uniform spun. The agents shouted. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might crack. Lily grabbed my arm and pulled me behind the couch like we were children hiding from a thunderstorm. In the chaos, a figure leaped over the low fence into my yard. He wore a hood and a mask. He moved with the kind of speed that makes you think of movies. He had a small device in his hand that flashed red. The agents raised their weapons. The masked figure shouted something into the dark. The device beeped and the yard lit up in a way that made shadows jump. I could not breathe. The box on the shelf slipped from the agent's hand and papers fluttered out like white birds. The masked man ran toward the door. The agent lunged to stop him. For a second, time seemed to crack. Then everything happened at once. Voices screamed. A light flashed too bright. The man with the badge shouted, "Get down." The masked man shouted back. I closed my eyes because the sound was too much. The world had become a place where the man I had buried might not be dead, where a wedding had become a crime scene, where my house was full of men with badges and a stranger who burst in through the night. When I opened my eyes again, someone grabbed my shoulder and pulled me to the floor. Lily's hand dug into mine like an anchor. The agent's voice was a rope pulling us together. "Stay down," he said. I curled up on the floor and felt the dust of the house settle on my skin. My mind was 1,000 small lights blown out at once. I wanted to scream, but the air would not come. Outside, the van's engine revved, and then there was a sound like glass breaking in the dark. I did not know who had come for me or why. I only knew one thing with a hard, terrible clarity. The life I had built on top of the grave of my husband was cracking open, and underneath it was something bigger and darker than I had imagined. In the middle of the noise, a hand reached down and picked up one of the photos that had fluttered from the box. It was the same wedding invitation photo I had seen at the church. The agent held it up. "Where did you get this?" he demanded. I did not answer. My mouth was full of dry wood. My heart was in my throat. Outside, a flashlight flashed across the yard. A figure ran toward the porch. And then the masked man hit the front door, and everything went black with the sound of a crash. For days after the letter, sleep was a stranger to me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel's face the way I last remembered it, cold, pale, and lifeless inside that coffin. The sound of the rain that day. The way his mother wailed, clutching his hand. The priest's voice. The smell of roses. It all came back like a film I couldn't stop replaying. And now, he was alive? Or someone who looked exactly like him was about to marry another woman. I had to know the truth. But how do you chase something that feels like madness? How do you tell people your dead husband might be alive without them looking at you like you've lost your mind? Still, I decided to do it alone. I couldn't drag anyone else into this. The wedding invitation had an address, Chicago, Illinois. A small church tucked in a suburban area. I took 2 days off from the clinic and packed a small suitcase. My mother tried asking where I was going, but I told her I needed a break. I didn't tell her what I'd found. I didn't tell anyone. The drive took hours, and every mile I drove, my heart pounded harder. I kept telling myself that there had to be some logical explanation. Maybe it was a look-alike. Maybe someone was playing a cruel prank. But deep down, my gut whispered something darker. When I finally got to Chicago, I checked into a small motel near the church listed on the invitation. The wedding was 2 days away. I decided to visit the venue the next morning, just to make sure it was real. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling, feeling like the walls were closing in. Around 2 a.m., I finally opened my laptop and searched for Ethan Myers Chicago wedding. My hands trembled as I typed. There it was. A local event planner's website had posted engagement photos of Ethan Myers and his fiancée, Claire Donovan. My heart stopped. Because the man in the pictures, smiling in a navy blue suit, his arm wrapped around a blonde woman in a white dress, was Daniel. My Daniel. He looked older, his hair shorter, his smile brighter. But I knew that smile. I'd memorized every curve of it. I'd once kissed that mouth 1,000 times. I pressed my hand over my mouth, trying not to scream. He was alive. The man I buried. The man I mourned. The man whose funeral I paid for. I zoomed in on the photo. His left hand still had that tiny scar near his thumb, the one he got from opening a can the wrong way when we were newlyweds. There was no mistaking it. Tears rolled down my cheeks. A mix of rage, disbelief, and heartbreak surged through me. I slammed the laptop shut and whispered into the darkness, "Why, Daniel? Why?" The next morning, I went to the church. I parked across the street, hidden behind a cafe. The building was beautiful, small white walls, a green roof, stained glass windows that caught the morning light. A woman was outside arranging flowers. I got out of the car and approached her, pretending to be curious. "Excuse me," I said, trying to sound casual. "Is this where the Myers-Donovan wedding will be?" She smiled. "Oh yes, it's going to be beautiful. They're such a lovely couple." I nodded, forcing a smile. "Have you met them?" "Oh, just once. The groom came by to look at the place last week. Charming man. Said he used to live in Oregon but wanted a fresh start here." My throat tightened. Oregon. That's where Daniel and I lived. When I got back to my car, I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My husband had faked his death. He'd left me to mourn him for 2 years. And now he was starting over with another woman. But why? The next day was the wedding. I didn't sleep that night either. I sat on the motel bed, staring at the clock until the morning sun crept through the blinds. When the time finally came, I dressed in black, tied my hair into a bun, and put on sunglasses. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I didn't plan to cause a scene. I just wanted to see him, to make sure it was really him. To understand. I parked near the church again, this time blending in with the crowd of guests. Everyone looked happy, laughing, holding gifts and flowers. The air smelled like lilies and champagne. And then, the church doors opened. Music started to play. And there he was. Daniel. Alive. Smiling. Walking down the aisle in a suit that looked too expensive for the man who once complained about car payments. My knees went weak. My vision blurred. I leaned against a pillar to keep myself upright. My heart screamed his name, but I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood. He reached the altar. The bride followed, radiant, laughing softly as she looked up at him with eyes full of love. The priest began to speak. I was frozen, trembling, breath shallow. And then, something even more shocking happened. Daniel looked toward the crowd. For a brief moment, his eyes landed right on me. And I swear, he went pale. His smile faltered. His mouth parted, just slightly. Our eyes locked. He knew me. He recognized me. And then he whispered something to the priest. The music stopped. The guests started murmuring. The bride looked confused. Daniel took a step back. And before anyone could react, he ran. He bolted out of the church, his bride screaming his name. I stood there, stunned, surrounded by gasps and whispers. Then I took a deep breath, pulled off my sunglasses, and followed him outside. I wasn't going to lose him again. Not this time. The moment Daniel ran, the world around me blurred. I didn't hear the gasps, the bride's cry, or the priest's voice echoing through the church. All I could see was him, his figure in that black suit, sprinting through the parking lot like a man being chased by ghosts. My legs moved before my mind could catch up. I shoved through the crowd, ignoring the shocked faces and whispered questions. Someone yelled, "Hey, you can't go out there," but I didn't care. Outside, the cold wind hit my face. Daniel was already unlocking a car, fumbling with the keys. "Daniel!" I screamed. He froze. Slowly, he turned. The look on his face, it wasn't confusion. It wasn't fear. It was guilt. His lips parted, his eyes wide like he'd just seen the dead rise from the grave. For a second, we just stared at each other. 2 years of pain, lies, and confusion hung between us. Then he got in the car. I ran toward him, banging on the window. "Don't you dare leave, Daniel. Don't you dare." He didn't look at me. He just started the engine. The tires screeched, the smell of burning rubber filled the air, and he was gone. I stood there, shaking, my heart pounding so violently I thought it would burst. Behind me, guests poured out of the church, murmuring, taking pictures, confused about what had just happened. The bride stumbled out in her gown, crying, "Ethan. Ethan, where are you going?" I turned and looked at her. Her eyes met mine, 2 women, both betrayed by the same man, standing on opposite ends of a cruel truth neither of us asked for. She looked at me, desperate. "Who are you?" she demanded. I hesitated, then said the only thing that came to mind. "The woman who buried him 2 years ago." Her face went blank. And that's when I walked away. I didn't know where to go or what to do next. But I knew one thing for sure, if Daniel thought he could vanish again, he was wrong. This time, I would find him. And he would answer every single question. That night, I booked another motel room in Chicago. My hands shook as I opened my laptop and started digging. I typed, Ethan Myers, Chicago. Then, Daniel Myers, Oregon. Then, obituary Daniel Myers 2023. And there it was, his obituary still online. Beloved husband, gone too soon. Died in a car accident. Survived by his wife, Emily Myers. My name, my pain, my lie. He had faked everything. The accident, the body, the death certificate. But how? I needed answers, and I wasn't leaving Chicago without them. The next morning, I drove back to the church. It was empty now, quiet, except for a few wilted flowers and confetti blowing across the parking lot. I found one of the event staff cleaning up. Hi, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Do you know where the groom went? The woman frowned. Oh, that was crazy yesterday. Poor bride. He just ran off. His car went toward the old bridge, I think. Everyone's been talking about it. The old bridge. I knew that bridge. I'd passed it on my way into town. It overlooked a river that shimmered like glass when the sun hit it right. I drove there, my pulse racing. When I got there, the place was deserted. The only sound was the water rushing below and the wind brushing through the trees. I parked the car and got out. For a moment, I stood at the edge, looking down at the water. And then I saw it. A car, half hidden behind the trees near the far end of the bridge. Black sedan. The same one Daniel had been driving. I walked toward it slowly, carefully. As I got closer, I saw him sitting inside, head down, hands gripping the steering wheel. I stopped a few feet away. Daniel, I said softly. He flinched, but didn't look up. Daniel, look at me. After a long moment, he turned his head. His eyes were red. His face looked older, worn, broken. Emily, he whispered. You shouldn't have come. I felt anger rise in me like fire. You shouldn't have died. He closed his eyes, his jaw tightening. I didn't have a choice. Yes, you did. I shouted, my voice cracking. You left me, Daniel. You made me bury an empty coffin. You let me mourn you for 2 years. Do you have any idea what that did to me? He looked away, tears in his eyes. You don't understand. Then make me understand. I cried. Tell me why you did it. Why you let me believe you were dead. Who are you hiding from? Who is that woman you were about to marry? He finally opened the door and stepped out. His face was pale, his hands trembling. I can't explain it here, he said. It's not safe. Not safe. I repeated. What are you talking about? He glanced around nervously, like someone was watching. Emily, please. Just trust me. Go home. Forget you saw me. If you love me, if you ever loved me, please, don't dig into this. I stared at him, my heart breaking all over again. You think I can just forget? You think I can walk away again after what you did? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. You have no idea what's at stake. And then, before I could speak again, a loud crack echoed across the bridge. The sound of glass shattering. Daniel ducked instinctively, grabbing me by the arm and pulling me down behind the car. Get down, he shouted. My ears rang. My heart stopped. Someone was shooting at us. I gasped, trembling. What's happening, Daniel? He didn't answer. He just looked at me with terror in his eyes and whispered, They found me. The air exploded with sound. Another shot cracked, louder this time, tearing through the silence and shattering the passenger side window. Glass rained down, glittering like broken ice. Stay down, Daniel yelled, pushing me lower behind the car. My heart pounded so violently it hurt. The smell of gunpowder burned my nose. I couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. Who's shooting at us? I screamed. Daniel peeked over the trunk, his face tense. Just stay quiet. Daniel. No. He reached into the car, grabbed something, his keys, I think, and then crawled to the driver's side. The car engine roared to life. Get in. What? Are you insane? Get in, Emily. Another bullet hit the rearview mirror. I didn't need to be told twice. I jumped into the car, slammed the door, and ducked as Daniel hit the gas. The tires screeched, the car lurched forward, and we tore down the narrow road leading away from the bridge. I looked back, heart still hammering. I couldn't see anyone, just the bridge shrinking in the distance. When we finally slowed down, we were miles away, deep in some wooded area. My voice shook. Daniel, what the hell was that? He didn't answer right away. His grip on the steering wheel was tight, his knuckles white. Finally, he whispered, "You weren't supposed to be part of this." Part of what? He sighed, pulling over beside a dirt trail. I told you, Emily. You should have stayed home. Stop talking in riddles. I shouted. Tell me the truth, Daniel. You faked your death, you left me to suffer for 2 years, and now someone's trying to kill us. You owe me the truth. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before, pure, exhausted fear. He ran a shaky hand through his hair. Do you remember the company I worked for before the accident? Of course, I said. The shipping firm in Portland. He nodded slowly. It wasn't just a shipping firm. What do you mean? They were smuggling things, illegal shipments hidden in containers, cash, weapons. I didn't know at first. But when I found out, I tried to report it. I froze. You mean? He nodded again. The night of my so-called accident, I was supposed to meet an agent from the FBI. But before I got there, someone called me and said they knew I'd talked. They threatened to kill you. My breath caught. Me? Yes. His voice cracked. They said they'd make me watch you die first. So I did the only thing I could, I disappeared. I stared at him, shaking my head. So you staged your death? He looked away. With help. A contact within the bureau helped fake the accident. They used a burned body from another case. It wasn't supposed to come back to haunt you, Emily. I thought you'd move on, that you'd be safe. My stomach turned. Safe? Daniel, I buried you. I cried myself to sleep for months. I lost everything. You think that's safe? Tears welled in his eyes. I didn't know what else to do. I covered my face, trying to steady my breathing. It was too much, too fast. Then what was that wedding? That woman? You were going to marry her, Daniel. How does that fit into your noble little story? He hesitated, and for the first time, guilt replaced fear in his expression. She didn't know who I really was, he said softly. Claire's father. He's part of the same network. I needed to get close to him. I was gathering evidence. My blood ran cold. You were using her. He nodded once. I stared out the window, my mind spinning. I didn't know if I should feel sorry for him or hate him. You were willing to marry another woman to catch them? His voice broke. I didn't plan to. But the deeper I got, the more dangerous it became. I thought if I just went through with it, I could finally finish this and disappear for good. Disappear again? I whispered. You mean leave me again? He looked at me, pained. Emily. No, I said firmly. You don't get to say my name like that. You faked your death, Daniel. You ruined my life. You can't just expect me to understand. Silence hung heavy in the car. The sound of the engine ticking filled the space between us. After a long pause, he said quietly, they must have found out I was talking to the feds again. That's why they came for me today. You shouldn't have followed me here. I clenched my fists. I had to know. He turned the ignition off. Then you're in danger now too. I looked up sharply. What? They saw you, Emily. They'll think you know everything. You can't go back home. My stomach dropped. So, what do we do now? He took a deep breath, staring out into the trees. We hide. At least until I can contact my handler again. And where exactly do you plan to hide? He looked at me then, a faint, sad smile tugging at his lips. There's a cabin about 20 miles north. Old hunting place. No cell service, no neighbors. Every part of me screamed no. But where else could I go? Whoever had just shot at us knew my face now. So, I followed him. The drive was long and tense. Every few minutes, Daniel checked the rearview mirror. The sun was setting when we finally turned down a dirt road that led into thick woods. The cabin appeared at the edge of a clearing, small, dusty, forgotten by time. We went inside. Cobwebs hung in the corners, dust coated the furniture. It smelled like wood and damp air. Daniel went straight to the back room, muttering about making a call through a secure radio he'd hidden there. I sat on the old couch, staring at my shaking hands. I didn't know what to feel. Relief that he was alive? Anger that he'd lied? Fear that someone wanted us both dead? After what felt like hours, he returned, looking even paler. "What is it?" I asked. He hesitated. "The line's dead. Someone must have intercepted it." Meaning? He met my eyes. Meaning they know where we are. Before I could react, headlights flashed outside the cabin. Daniel froze. Then came the sound of car doors slamming. And footsteps. Dozens of them. He grabbed my wrist, eyes wide. "Emily, run." The night erupted with chaos. "Run!" Daniel shouted again, pulling me toward the back door. I stumbled, my heart slamming against my ribs. Outside, the sound of boots crunched on gravel. Men's voices, low, sharp, cut through the dark. They were close. Daniel yanked the door open and cold air rushed in. "Go," he hissed, shoving me forward. I bolted out, my shoes sinking into the damp earth. The forest was pitch black, the trees tall and skeletal against the moonlight. Branches whipped against my arms as I ran. I didn't dare look back. Behind me, I heard Daniel shout something, then a gunshot. Then another. "Daniel!" I screamed, turning around. He wasn't there. Another shot cracked, closer this time, splintering the bark near my face. I dropped to the ground, crawling behind a fallen log. My breath came in short, desperate gasps. I could hear footsteps, men shouting orders, flashlights cutting through the dark like knives. "Find them. Don't let them get away." Them. Meaning me and Daniel. But Daniel was nowhere in sight. I tried to stay still, but every sound made me flinch. The rustling leaves, the click of safeties being released, it all blended into one terrifying symphony. Then I heard it. A voice. Deep, calm, almost cold. "She's not the target. Bring him alive." My heart stopped. Not the target? They didn't want me dead. They wanted Daniel. I pressed my hand against my mouth to stop from making a sound. I had to stay hidden. I had to survive. Minutes crawled by like hours. The footsteps grew fainter, the voices fading as they spread out. When I finally dared to move, I crept through the forest, my eyes straining in the dark. Somewhere in the distance, I saw a faint light, a flickering glow. The cabin. Against my better judgment, I went back. I needed to see if Daniel was alive. When I reached the clearing again, smoke rose from the roof. The cabin door hung open. Everything was silent. I stepped inside carefully, holding my breath. The living room was wrecked, chairs overturned, glass shattered, the radio smashed to pieces. The smell of gunpowder filled the air. And then I saw him. Daniel. He was lying on the floor, blood on his arm, breathing hard. "Daniel." I ran to him, falling to my knees. "You're hurt." "I'm fine," he groaned, trying to sit up. "They're gone for now." I tore off a piece of my shirt and pressed it against his wound. "You need a hospital." He shook his head weakly. "No hospitals. They'll find me." "Daniel, you're bleeding." He grabbed my hand. "Listen to me. There's something you need to know." I froze. His eyes locked on mine, sharp and desperate. "What is it?" I whispered. He swallowed hard. "The people after me, they're not just smugglers, Emily. They're government contractors. Private agents. They handle dirty work, things that aren't supposed to exist on record." My heart raced. "You mean like assassins?" He nodded slightly. "They used me. I thought I was working for a shipping company, but I was moving untraceable cargo for them, files, weapons, even people. When I found out, I tried to stop it. That's when everything went bad." I stared at him in shock. "So you ran?" "Yes." His voice was hoarse. "And now they think I still have something they want." "What?" He looked down at his jacket, then pulled out a small black flash drive, barely the size of a thumbnail. "This. Everything they've done. Names, transactions, proof." I stared at it like it was a ticking bomb. "And you've been hiding it for 2 years?" "Yes." "Then why fake your death?" "Because it was the only way to protect you," he whispered. "If they knew you existed, they'd have used you against me." For a moment, I just sat there. The sound of wind outside, the faint crackling of the fire, it all faded away. I didn't know if I was supposed to feel grateful or furious. "You lied to me, Daniel," I said quietly. "You took my life away. You left me with a grave and a ghost. And now you tell me you did it for my safety." His hand trembled as he reached for me. "Emily, please." No, I said firmly. You don't get to beg. You don't get to make me pity you again. He looked at me, pain flooding his eyes. I never stopped loving you. I laughed bitterly. You don't fake your death for someone you love, Daniel. You tell them the truth. Before he could reply, the sound of an engine roared outside. Daniel's eyes widened. They're back. He tried to stand, but stumbled. I grabbed the flash drive and shoved it into my pocket. What do we do? He looked at me, his jaw tightening. You run again. I'm not leaving you. He shook his head, his voice breaking. You have to, Emily. They'll kill you if they find you. You can still expose them. You can still end this. I stared at him, tears filling my eyes. No, not again. I'm not burying you twice. He pressed something into my palm, a car key. There's an old Jeep behind the shed. Go. I didn't move. Emily, go. The door burst open. Men in dark uniforms flooded the room, flashlights slicing through the shadows. I froze as one of them shouted, "Drop the weapon." Daniel raised his hands. Don't shoot. One of them grabbed me, yanking my arms behind my back. Let her go, Daniel yelled. Target confirmed, a voice said coldly. Secure them both. Then Daniel moved faster than I'd ever seen him. He lunged at one of the men, knocking the gun out of his hand. Shots fired, echoing through the cabin. I screamed. The man holding me fell. Daniel spun toward me, blood running down his side. Run. I didn't think. I bolted through the back door, into the freezing night. The forest blurred past me. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but I didn't stop. I ran until I reached the Jeep. I jumped in, started the engine, and tore down the dirt road. Behind me, the cabin glowed orange. It was on fire. Daniel, I whispered, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I didn't know if he was alive. I didn't know who those men really were. All I knew was that I had the flash drive. And that, for the first time, I wasn't the broken woman who buried her husband. I was the woman about to uncover why he had to die again.